Well, I think Well, I think U.S. is still great with respect to innovation and fostering entrepreneurship. Um, it's still great. I think we don't want to be complacent, and we want to say, okay, how can we make it better over time? And I think we want to be cautious about the gradual creep of regulations and bureaucracy. The rules and regulations are immortal, and if we keep making more of a year and do not do something about removing them, then eventually we will be able to do nothing. This is very important, and I think not well appreciated. This is sort of like the slow boil of the frog. You know, his frog doesn't jump out because it gets just slightly hotter each year. We should be aware of this, I think, particularly at the state level. But the best thing that government can do is just get out of the way. And so I'd say that's the default, probably the best thing to do. Then after that would be ensuring that there are not artificial monopolies, that there is a fertile ground for startups, and because what can happen over time is that you can get regulatory capture by large companies, where they influence the regulators and the legislators to favor their situation, and then you have a forest of redwoods, and you just can't. The little trees can't grow. So we really want to have an environment that tends to favor smaller companies and startups. The big companies really don't need the support, but they will generally try to work the system to establish a monopoly of some kind. We should be wary of that. You know, in general, it's like I think we could consider changing the way we think of things from, say, capitalism versus communism. Does a given organization, government or commercial, have good feedback loop for the customer, whether it's the people as a whole or whoever the customers are? And if you've got like a duopoly or oligopoly, they're generally going to have a weak response to their customer. And if they're a monopoly, they're going to have the weakest response to the customer. And the reason that government, I think, is often the worst at responding to the customers being the people is that they're a monopoly that can't go bankrupt, or usually cannot go bankrupt. So there's not really a cleansing process for a government short of a catastrophe. So I mean, if you want to complain about the DMV, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
You know, how many candy companies are there? Like, Big Candy is like consolidated into like 3 companies or something, and they also own all the dog food and the baby food. So it's like, when's the last time there was some good candy? What's the forcing function for a new candy bar? I haven't seen one in ages. So we got to watch this like consolidation that ends up resulting in lower responsiveness to the end customer. And like I said, it's like, you can think of like, in the limit, government is simply the largest corporation.
Yeah.
So some people, I think it's a false dichotomy to look at government and sort of industry as separate. Government is simply a corporation in the limit. It is the ultimate corporation with a monopoly. But then as you get closer to, like I said, a monopoly, as the feedback loop gets weaker and less responsive to the customer, that's where you have something which does not maximize the happiness of the people, which should be our objective overall. It's government's responsibility to establish the rules of the game and then ensure that those rules are properly enforced. Like sort of like the referees on the field, and it's like football or something. Then you got the rules, and you got the referees. You got to make sure the rules are the right rules, and the referees are enforcing the rules. I think that's an important role for government to ensure that the rules are correct and that the incentives are what we actually want them to be for, like I said, the long-term maximum happiness of the people into the future. Where I think government does not do a great job is when they want to not just be a referee on the field, they want to be a player on the field. You want the government to be carefully focused on ensuring the rules of the game are what we actually want them to be, that we're getting rid of old rules. This is very important, which is not occurring, and that the rules are enforced such that we have ethical behavior of companies. Now, there are times when you have an unpriced externality such as the CO2 capacity of the oceans and atmosphere. So then, if that is not priced in effectively, then you can get behavior, industry behavior that does not, that we think is arguably not good for the environment or not good for the future of the planet. Most of the time, provided pricing is correct, you will see correct behavior from private industry. So, that's like one example where if we effectively price carbon, we'll see the right behavior, and then the government does not need to try to pick technology winners and losers. They can simply incent the outcome. I think it's incredibly important that government focus on incenting the outcome, not the path. Tesla and SpaceX obviously have massive operations in California. In fact, it's worth noting that Tesla is the last car company still manufacturing cars in California. SpaceX is the last aerospace company still doing significant manufacturing in California. So there used to be over a dozen car plants in California, and California used to be the center of aerospace manufacturing. My companies are the last two left. I want to emphasize, so that's a very important point to make. For myself, yes, I have moved to Texas. We've got the Starship development here in South Texas, where I am right now. We're hopefully going to do a launch later today. And then we've got the big factory development just outside of Austin. In my case, the two biggest things that I've got going on right now are the Starship development in South Texas, and then the big new U.S. factory for Tesla, which is called Giga Texas, just by Austin. So those are the two biggest projects. So these necessarily drive the use of my time here. And then the other big thing for Tesla right now is the Giga Berlin. So I was in Berlin, spent a fair bit of time in Berlin working on that. I think California is great. So there's a lot of things that are really great about California. Obviously, it's the biggest economy in the country, most number of people. I do think that there is something that happens when, if it's, go back to the sort of sports team analogy, like if a team has been winning for too long, they do tend to get a little complacent, a little entitled, and then they don't win the championship anymore. So California's been winning for a long time. And I think they're taking it for granted a little bit. Yeah. Our CEOs in corporate America focus enough on product improvement? I think the answer is no.
Quite a lot.
And I think generally
unspoken
my
when you
advice,
speak, like a character from the Frank Capra movie.
My recommendation really be.
I'm very flattered. I really appreciate it. I'm just a dumb nightclub comedian.
A guy like me should never be allowed to get in here in the first place. I know that.
But that's how bad journalism has gotten in America.
People in this country pick up their papers and what do they read?
Lies. You lied about Iraq, that repealing Glass-Steagall would help our economy. You tell people they can't have Medicare for all.
Why don't you tell the people the truth for a change?
The problem is the criminals bought the media. They've been bought by the people who bought our government. We have corporate rule. One big corrupt cabal. Except I ain't playing their game anymore.
Less time on financials.
I'm standing up and I'm calling you out. Corporate sellouts. The people who turn their back on unions, workers, and sick poor people.
They got another thing coming.
We're taking our goddamn country back.
I'm going to stay right here and fight for this lost cause. Even if this room
sometimes people lose sight of that. The company has no value in and of itself.
As soon as I become a threat, they're going to try and shut us down.
Defend the machine.
CNN ran a giant smear piece.
I'm a threat, baby! Woo! Either I'm dead right or I'm crazy.
Now the real fight starts.
Somebody listen to me.
Keep up the great work, man.
You're killing it.
You really do speak the truth. I watch your videos all the time.
Honestly, would recommend to anyone listening that
We all are Americans and we all need the same things. Good schools, good jobs, health care, legal pot. 3 out of 4 ain't bad. The point is...
a lot of people out there are already doing that, but I just
Funniest man on the planet is right here.
I really enjoyed watching this. It's funny and insightful.
Outstanding job.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Great to be here with you. I've admired you from afar.
Everybody watches your show.
Oh, yeah. Remind me, it's good taste.
Ladies and gentlemen, from the south side of Chicago, Jimmy Dore!
Just make your product better. This is the thing that really matters. it's not some mysterious thing. It's just basically just be like an absolute perfectionist about the product that you make, the service that's provided. Seek negative feedback from all quarters. From customers, from people who aren't customers, like, hey, okay, what can we make this? How can we make this better? And I think it's absolutely learnable. And just if you find yourself spending a lot of time in getting presentations and reviewing spreadsheets, you're barking up the wrong tree. What would you love to have? Oh, and sometimes I think, and I've had this conversation at Tales a few times, where it's like we're trying to think, okay, it's at times like we don't love this product, but we think others will love it. That's not really how it works. If you don't love it, don't expect others will either. Well, I mean, some of the things I mentioned just before, it's like where I was recommending that people spend less time in a conference room, less time getting presentations and spreadsheets, and that, like, generally that's like when I have spent too much time in a conference room, that's generally when things have gone awry. And when I go and spend time on the factory floor, or really using the cars, thinking about the rockets, it's like that's where things have gone better. Well, there's a lot of talented people at SpaceX and Tesla. I think the morale is good. I for sure respect them greatly, and it's an honor to work with them. And I find that if I am engrossed in the details of the issues, this does not result in them feeling better, but worse, but feeling better. Like they're in my experience, more energized. It's like, if you think about like war, it's like, you want the general in some like, ivory tower or on the front lines? Like, the troops are gonna fight a lot harder if they see the general on the front lines than if they think generals, in some cushy situation. So it's like, nobody bleeds for the prince in the palace. Get out there on the goddamn front lines and show them that you care and that you're not just in some plush office somewhere. We're kind of debating, like, should we raise money or should we not? It wasn't like a 100% sure thing. In the end, we thought, well, we can retire a lot of the debt and increase the security of the company, probably a good thing. And for less than 1% of dilutions, probably makes sense. But we're neither here nor there on that. I think it's could have gone either way. The main thing I see missing here is that we need to go 3D in cities in order to alleviate traffic congestion. And I think probably the best way to do that is with tunnels. For many years, I was asked, what do I see as the biggest opportunity for new companies? And I kept saying, can someone please build tunnels? For half a decade, I said this, and nobody built tunnels. So I was like, fine, we'll start a company and start building some tunnels. And we've got the first tunnel that's going to be opening up, first commercial tunnel opening up in Vegas, going from the convention center to the Strip. And I think people will have an opportunity to try it out and be able to see that, hey, if we just go 3D in cities, we don't have to be stuck in gridlock. This is great. Yeah. So I'd recommend tunnels. And then for long distance travel, you can do tunnels or tubes. But if you evacuate the tunnel and essentially remove the air or most of the air, you can get rid of the air friction, and you can go supersonic and do so with no dependence on weather and with no need to get to high altitude or create any sonic boom issues. So that's what I meant by sort of a hyperloop. It's just basically a pressurized electric car in a vacuum tube. So I think this would be a revolution in transport that would be amazing, and hopefully others do it, not just the Boring Company. Silicon Valley or the San Francisco Bay Area has too much influence on the world, in my opinion. And I say that as someone who has spent most of his life in California, mostly in the Bay Area. But this social media is still very much centered in Silicon Valley. So I think we need to be concerned about mind viruses, just memes that travel very quickly through social media that may or may not be correct. And we certainly want to encourage a healthy dialogue.
You are a criminal for not reporting it.